Discover 10 spine-chilling, sinister tales, terrifying true stories that were exposed on Reddit. The soft click and whir of Jenna's living room clock seemed louder than ever on that dark, still night. 11 o'clock. Just 3 hours until her late shift at the grocery store. She leaned back against the couch and sighed, clutching her phone while scrolling through Reddit. The headlines blurred as her heart raced. The Watcher. Posts describing shadowy figures lurking in seemingly safe suburban neighborhoods chilled her to the bone. Garden gnomes were disappearing everywhere, stolen or taken, as neighbors in her Ohio suburb remained blissfully unaware of the menace lurking among them. Max was fast asleep in his room, blissfully ignorant of the unraveling chaos surrounding them. Reading bedtime stories had become their nightly anchor, a sanctuary from the storm of her chaotic past with a manipulative ex-husband. But tonight, that peaceful routine felt more precarious than ever. Every creak of the house felt exaggerated, echoing off the walls like a warning. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, she sensed a shadow against the bright moonlight filtering through their kitchen window. Her breath caught in her throat. Maybe it was just her imagination, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Feeling the icy grip of dread on her heart, she brushed it off. Exhaustion made her paranoid. Surely, that was all it was. Before she could dismiss it entirely, a shiver ran down her spine as she thought of Max's whispered words the other night, "Mommy, can I keep my new friend?" Confusion hung thick in the air as she recalled the way he'd pointed towards the corner of the room, where nothing stood, nothing but darkness. With a jolt, she remembered the posts. A figure, an unseen presence named the Watcher. Had it really come knocking? Was that even possible? Before she could spiral deeper, she took a breath and put on a brave face for her son. She had to focus, to remove these thoughts from her mind as the clock ticked the minutes away. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Discussions with her neighbor, Dave, became her solace, but now personal secrets slipping from his lips. Everything sounded ominous. The words, hidden lives, and past transgressions, haunted her. What did he know that she didn't? Max's new friend, murmuring in the night, always gave her the creeps. Shadows slithered, seemingly alive just beyond her line of sight. And then, campaigns of weird disturbances festered into something darker. Pets vanished. Neighbors grew suspicious of one another. And every gathering grew tightly wound, laughter stiffening against an undercurrent of fear. Tonight, her home felt cold, foreboding. Max whispered again, and this time, she dared to listen. "The shadows play with me, Mommy," he said, as a tremor gripped her heart. She glanced towards the window, breath held tight. Dark shapes flitted outside, fracturing her illusion of safety. As she pieced together the breadcrumbs of truth, dread settled thick upon her like a suffocating blanket. What if the Watcher wasn't just a ghostly tale? What if the real threat wasn't some spirit haunting the night, but rather the very man she trusted to protect her? Jenna struggled to silence the storm brewing inside her. She closed her eyes, focusing on the rhythmic pounding of her heartbeat, a stark reminder of the fragility of safety. She had to calm down, for Max's sake. He needed her to be strong, even if she felt anything but. The clock ticked on, each second a nagging reminder of an approaching danger that loomed beyond the walls of her home. The flicker she thought she dismissed returned, and it danced at the edge of her vision again. Panic surged, but she stifled it, shaking her head as if to clear away the shadows. "Max," she called, her voice wavering. "Why don't we grab that extra blanket and snuggle up on the couch? Just a couple more stories before bed." The only sound that greeted her was the soft creak of the floor beneath her feet as she crossed the dimly lit halls, her pulse drumming wildly in her ears. "Okay, Mommy." His small voice piped from his room, carrying a hint of excitement and something darker. Jenna rubbed her arms as she entered his room. The shadows seemed alive here, slinking across the walls as she reached for the light switch. The pale bulb flickered to life, casting long, eerie shadows that twisted like twisted branches in the night. "Look!" Max pointed towards the corner, and her heart dropped as she followed his gaze. "I can see him." "Who, sweetheart?" Her voice trembled, and she crouched down to his eye level, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "His name is Mr. Wiggle," Max whispered, eyes wide with a childlike wonder. "He has big eyes and runs super fast in the dark." Her throat turned dry as the stories danced in her mind once more. The stories in the news, the missing pets, the shadowy figure watching from afar. Was Max really seeing something? "Max, buddy, how do you know about Mr. Wiggle?" She heard the shaky quality in her words and hated herself for it. He giggled, but the laughter was wrong, coated in an unsettling edge. "He told me. He says we can be friends forever. But we have to play his game." "What game?" Fear tightened a vice around her chest, constricting her breath. His finger traced tiny paths in the air as he spoke. "He says if we don't play, he won't leave us alone." A cold sweat trickled down her spine as she glanced toward the window, heart pounding. Outside, the shapes writhed, silhouettes flailing against the fabric of night, as if they weren't content remaining in inertia. With each passing second, they became more substantial, reaching hungrily for something beyond the glass. "Max, promise me you won't listen to Mr. Wiggle," she said, voice barely a whisper. "It's just your imagination, okay? Just shadows. We can keep each other safe." The child stared wide-eyed, yet disappointment flickered across his face as he glanced toward the corner, where the darkness pooled thickest. "He says you don't believe. That makes him angry." An icy chill gripped the room, and Jenna's breath coiled into her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, to run from whatever supernatural force had found its way into their lives. She wouldn't lose her son to a figment of an overactive childhood imagination or whatever monstrosity was behind it. Then the laughter sounded again, this time louder, echoing in mocking reverberation. It resonated through the walls as if the house itself was alive, joining in on the sinister game. "Max!" she shouted, but suddenly, darkness seeped from the corners, engulfing her in a suffocating shroud. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into suffocating blackness. "Mommy!" "The shadows!" Max cried, his voice barely breaking through the suffocating darkness. Jenna grabbed his hand, squeezing it tight, heart racing with a primal fear. In that moment, she realized with a jolt, the figure she had mistaken for a shadow had been watching her the entire time. The laughter toying with her, enjoying her fear was real, and then she remembered. Fumbling for her phone, she turned on the flashlight. Beam slicing through the oppressive dark, dread coiling around her with merciless grip. Illumination landed on the corner, and there, glistening just beyond her reach, were two greedy, pinprick eyes. "Mommy!" Max screamed, the shrill innocence echoing in a realm where innocence shivered away. She turned to run, but the door slammed shut, cutting off her escape. What kind of game had they unwittingly entered? And what would Mr. Wiggle demand from them next? Her heart raced in unison with her mounting horror as she pondered one question: what happens when the game begins? The air was thick, heavy with dread, as Jenna's heart hammered against her ribcage. The oppressive darkness seemed to breathe around her, whispering secrets that gnawed at the edges of her sanity. She tightened her grip on Max's hand, the small warmth grounding her in this swirling void of fear. "Stay close," she urged, voice barely above a whisper. The flashlight beam quivered as she moved, illuminating the room in interrupted bursts. Shadows leapt and fled at the edge of her vision. She knew she had to keep it steady, to find a way out. Telling herself it was all in her head felt like a thin veneer, ready to crack. "Mr. Wiggle," Max murmured, voice hollow, gaze transfixed on the corner. Jenna's stomach twisted as she followed his line of sight. The edges of the room wavered, melting into dark shapes that no longer looked like furniture. Was it her imagination, or did they pulse as they loomed closer? She pointed the light toward the door, praying it was still a way out. Max, she urged, a new urgency creeping into her tone. We need to find another exit. Quick. Just as she turned, cold laughter echoed once more, sickly sweet and dripping with malice. The little boy's head jerked, and he stared wide-eyed at the shadows that danced, forming grotesque figures that seemed to taunt them. Mommy, he's right there. Max screamed, pointing again, his voice a fragile thread of terror. Panic coursed through Jenna. She swung the flashlight again, heart racing. The beam flickered and then wavered, as if critiqued by the darkness that refused to relent. She felt it then, a deep, unmistakable chill creeping up her spine. Whatever it was getting closer. Max, we have to. Before she could finish, the light dimmed dramatically, a slow breath of its final gasp. No, no, no. Panic surged as she banged it against her palm, desperately willing it to stay alive. But it only flickered once, twice, then plunged them into unyielding darkness. The air felt alive, a predator waiting to pounce. She could almost taste the fear, bitter and metallic. The laughter stopped, summer quiet suddenly engulfing the space, a silence that was heavier than the dark. Mommy, Max's voice was barely a whisper. I can't see. Listen to me, she whispered back, breathing through the fear constricting her chest. Close your eyes. Just trust me. Moments stretched long and thin, like shadows stretching across the walls. A soft rustling sound echoed, inching closer. Jenna had no idea what it was, but she felt it, a presence looming, intent on making them part of its twisted game. She didn't have a plan. Not anymore. All she had was instinct. It was as if the shadows were closing in, suffocating her, teasing her with their silent mockery. Jenna tiptoed backwards, pulling Max along with her, desperately searching for the door. A sudden loud thud echoed around them. Something struck the wall right next to her, almost like a breath of wind grabbing at her ear. Her heart stuttered, panic flooding her with a ferocious force. Max, run! She shouted, her voice raw with urgency, and in one desperate motion, she turned, yanking Max behind her as they dashed toward the door. But as her fingers grasped the handle, a shattering shriek ricocheted through the darkness, freezing her in place. The shadows morphed, twisting. The eyes were everywhere. They were hungry. Let us play. It taunted, the voice layered, mocking, echoing. No. Jenna shouted, sensing time slipping away. Adrenaline surged as she flung the door open. Light spilled in, but only for an instant before darkness surged back. They had to escape. They had to break free from this nightmare. But before she could step out, an icy grip latched around her ankle, pinning her down. Max shrieked, stepping backwards as terror clouded his tiny face. Jenna struggled, heart racing as she fought against the unseen force pulling her back. Mommy! A new shadow leapt into the light, formless yet formidably large, bursting forth to claim her. Jenna's screams shattered the stillness of the night. She might lose Max before she could save him. And somewhere in those terrifying shadows, she knew Mr. Wiggle was waiting for his prize. What would he want next? Another game? Or something far worse? Jenna's mind raced, focusing on the shriek that still echoed in her ears. She was torn, her instinct clashing against reality. The cold grip around her ankle tightened, and her heart thundered with desperation. She had to save Max. She mustered every ounce of strength in her body and kicked outward, desperate to shake off the icy fingers that clung to her. Max! She called out, her voice a mix of urgency and dread. She could feel him vibrating with fear beside her, his soft whimpers slicing through the suffocating silence. Run! Get to the light! For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of resolve in his eyes, but it vanished, smothered by terror. Mommy, don't let it take you! Max screamed, his tiny voice fissuring under the weight of panic. I won. I promise. Jenna shouted back, choking on her words. She felt the shadows skittering around her, growing bolder, inching closer. She looked down, feeling the cold tendrils tugging at her. They had texture like fog but were more solid, a creeping dread wrapping around her leg like a snake. Just when despair threatened to pull her under, Max took a step toward her, his small frame trembling but determined. "I can help," he insisted, voice shaky but fierce. He grasped the flashlight, now flickering feebly in his tiny hands, and aimed it toward the door. "Max, no!" she gasped. The shadows hissed. A wave of darkness slithered toward them, snapping and crackling as if enraged, but there was something in the air. The darkness seemed to stall, almost hesitant in the spotlight of their flimsy beam. "Keep it steady. Keep the light on it," Jenna yelled, pushing through the panic. If she could buy them even a second. Max found his footing and pointed the dying light toward where he thought the danger lurked. The shadows recoiled, darting back just enough to give her the breath she needed. In that fleeting moment, Jenna yanked at her leg one last time with all her might. The grip finally snapped free. She bolted, adrenaline surging in her veins as she dashed for the door. Max stumbled, but Jenna's hand was there, pulling him forward, the flashlight swinging wildly between them. A horrible shriek rang out again, a cacophony of despair and rage that threatened to tear at the edges of their sanity. "Faster!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. They hurtled through the doorway and into the hall, the light of the outside world flickering through an opposing door just ahead, but as they ran, the shadows surged like a tide, merging with the air around them, mingling with the light but refusing to be banished with it. Jenna glanced back. The room they had just fled pulsed and distorted as if it were alive, writhing in agony and rage. "Mommy, I can't," Max cried, breathing fast and shallow. "Just a little further." Jenna's chest felt like it was going to burst. She couldn't let herself doubt now. Not when they were so close, just when hope flickered like a beacon in the dim corridor. An enormous weight slammed against her back, pushing her to the ground. She felt the cool breath of the shadows wrap around her and her screams pierced the air. She could hardly see, the world swirling as she scrambled to regain her footing, hands clawing at the floor in panic. "Mommy! Max, go!" But there was no answer. Panic squeezed her heart. The shadows laughed, taunting her, an orchestra of sinister whispers growing louder. She twisted to find Max. The light illuminated the path behind her but revealed only darkness where he had been. "Max!" she shouted, voice cracking open with fear. The laughter echoed again, the taunts rattling her bones. Suddenly, Jenna froze as a dark shape appeared just beyond the light, tall, stretched, grotesque, glazed with malice. "Are you ready to play?" it whispered, distorting with wicked glee. The space warped around them, reality bending as Jenna's heart skidded to a halt. Desperation clawed at her throat as shadows stretched like fingers by her side. She couldn't lose him. Not now. As the figure advanced, she knew deep down that their nightmare was only just beginning. What had Mr. Wiggle unleashed? Was he keeping secrets worse than she'd ever imagined? Jenna's breath came in ragged gasps as she fought against the weight of shadows pressing down on her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but fear anchored her in place. The tall figure, its features obscured, stalked closer, a caricature of everything dark and twisted. "Mommy!" The desperate plea barely registered in her mind as she searched frantically for a shred of hope. She could feel the humid breath of the creature on her face, the chilling realization that it thrived on their despair. "Stay back!" she yelled, her voice hoarse but fueled with a fierce protectiveness. A glimmer of light flickered on the floor. Max's flashlight, the beam bouncing off the walls, illuminating twisted shadows that twisted cruelly in its path. "Max!" she cried again, twisting her head to try and catch a glimpse of her son. The shadows recoiled, revealing a brief glimpse of a plant-like figure reaching for him. Panic surged through her veins. She couldn't lose him, not now. The darkness swelled and pounded, the shadows merged and split, revealing the outline of dozens of writhing, grasping hands. They clawed at the air, desperate to pull her into their depths. "Mom! Help!" Max's voice was closer now. Jenna's heart sank as she realized he could still hear her, but she couldn't see him. "Max, listen. You have to find the light." She spat the words through clenched teeth, trying to push the shadows away. "Please, don't let it take me." His voice broke, sending a fresh wave of guilt crashing through her. Gritting her teeth, she shoved against the darkness with all her strength. Clawing her way to the edge of the shadows, she lunged forward, desperately reaching for her son. But the creature loomed larger. The laughter echoed around them, a cruel symphony urging her to give in. Jenna could feel its anticipation, like a predator poised to strike. "Nothing exists out here." It crooned with that sickly sweet tone, its form flickering like a candle. "You and your little one are nothing but memories to me." "No." Panic shot through her. Jenna scanned the periphery of the light, trying to spot Max. The young boy's soft whimper turned her heart to ice. "Light, Max. The light." Somehow, the shadows reacted, shying away from her frantic cries. She breathed in hope, a tiny flame in the ebony night. As she pushed herself off the floor and stumbled toward what she hoped was warmth, the creature lunged forward, reaching one long, thin arm toward her. "Mommy!" Max shouted, and she felt the world shake beneath her. "Hold on to the flashlight, buddy. Focus on the beam." Suddenly, the vibrations around her shifted. The darkness seemed to turn inward, collapsing on itself, pulling Jenna closer, pulling Max even more so. In a desperate attempt, Jenna raised her hand, snatching the flickering light and directed it toward the creature. She felt the fear surging through her, but it was matched now by fierce resolve. "Stay back." But the figure only leaned closer, head tilting as if considering her, amused and delighted with her struggle. Again, it whispered, the malevolence coiling around every word, "You think light will save you? How amusing." And suddenly, with a horrifying crash, the ground beneath her feet splintered. In that moment of chaos, Jenna felt her body tipping, careening over the edge of darkness. "Max!" The scream tore from her lips as she fought against the falling. Light erupted around her in a blinding flash, and as she fell deeper into the void, Jenna felt the heat of fury mixed with chilling despair, then silence. But in that terrifying quiet, she felt something urging her to rise. To fight on. As she opened her eyes, she realized she wasn't alone in the abyss. What awaited her in this all-consuming void? And was Max still somewhere out there, lost among the shadows? Jenna blinked hard, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. The void wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, tugging persistently at her limbs as if trying to pull her into its depths. She shuddered, looking for movement, any sign of life, of hope. "Max," she whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. It evaporated into the darkness. The chilling silence wrapped itself around her, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, she heard a sound, soft and distant, a whimper. It was unmistakably Max. "Mom, where are you?" His voice trembled, filled with terror. "Max." Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm, to think. "I'm here. Keep talking to me." Another whimper echoed, this time tinged with despair. "I'm scared, Mommy. The shadows are everywhere." I know." Her heart raced as she strained to pinpoint his location. "Just follow the light from your flashlight." There was a pause, then she saw it, a faint flicker, growing brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Was it real? Or a cruel trick of the void? Jenna edged closer, driven by the flicker that now illuminated outlines of twisted shapes writhing against the edges. They looked like lost souls, trapped in a nightmare. "Max!" Jenna shouted, her voice cracking. "Come towards my voice." Silence hung again, but the beams suddenly dimmed, and the shadows lunged forward. She surged toward the light, running, heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. The darkness embraced her, fingers brushing against her skin icy cold, searching for a grip. No. You can't have me. She thrashed against the encroaching tendrils, only to feel their grasp tighten real, malevolent. Jenna fought back, ripping her arms away, desperate to keep moving. Mom! Max's voice again, closer now, but still drowned in fear. Just a little further. She yelled, reaching out, feeling for something, anything to pull her son to her. She could taste the bitterness of dread in the air. Then, from the gloom, a figure emerged. Tall, thin, with eyeless sockets that seemed to pull at her very soul. You think you can escape? It hissed, echoing through the void. Your child is mine. As it advanced, the light pulsed brighter as if responding to the alarm in her heart. I want to let you take him. Warmth radiated through her fingertips. She gripped the beam tighter, focusing on every ounce of will within her. Stop! She screamed, and the word sliced through the thick air, reverberating like thunder. The deformation of the figure sparked hesitation, just for a moment, but that was all she needed. Max's cries grew louder. Mom! I see the light. Come to it. She urged desperately. The shadows shifted, shrieking in protest as Jenna directed the beam toward them, the light acting as a shield against the tendrils creeping ever closer. But then, a sickening realization dawned. The beam was flickering, weakening. No, 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 Jenna gasped, panic surging. Mom! Help! The pleading in Max's voice strained her heart, making her pulse thunder in her ears. Shadows clawed at her once more furious this time, as if realizing the threat she posed. Stay back! She thundered again, pushing the light farther, even as darkness clawed at her, tearing through her defenses. Mommy, please! With a final surge, Jenna dashed forward, locating Max's silhouette just beyond her reach, but the darkness was closing in fast, threatening to engulf them both. An overwhelming sense of dread ballooned in her stomach. No! And with one desperate look into the abyss, Jenna steadied herself. This wasn't the end. Then, a whispering voice echoed behind her, cruel and taunting, You think you can save him, little girl? The shadows know your fears. Jenna's breath hitched, her mind racing with the realization that there was more to the darkness than mere shadows. It knew her. Knew them both. As panic clawed at her throat, Jenna's heart thundered in her chest. How could she confront an enemy that thrived on her deepest fears? But before she could process another thought, Max's light flickered out. Max! Fear coiled within her, sharper than ever. Was it really dark? What else awaited them? Both in the black. All the dread she had been trying to fight off surged forward like a wave. Amidst the grasping shadows, Jenna felt like she was slipping, helpless against the tide. The weight of despair threatened to pull her under. Mom! His voice faded away, desperation consuming her. Jenna screamed into the darkness, daring it to answer. But silence only answered back. What lay ahead in the endless dark? And would she have the strength to face it? Panic surged through Jenna as she stood on the precipice of darkness, her heart pounding like a war drum. Max's voice was fading, a haunting echo swallowed by the emptiness, and the shadows writhed like a pack of hungry wolves. Everything felt painfully real, yet the surreal atmosphere twisted her senses, distorting her grip on reality. Max! She called again, voice breaking under the weight of fear. Each syllable felt like a futile plea, drifting into an abyss that would not answer. The void responded with a hushed whisper, almost taunting. Shadows swirled around her legs, brushing her with icy fingers that sent chills racing up her spine. Something in the air shifted. A flicker of movement caught her eye at the edge of her vision. A mass, darker than the surrounding shadows, began to take form. It was not the eyeless figure from before but something more fragmented, like smoke slowly coalescing into a shape reminiscent of her son. Mom, I'm scared. The voice was his, unmistakably. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Was this the darkness playing tricks on her? Her mind was racing, torn between hope and dread. She crouched low, heart hammering against her ribs, trying to discern whether it was Max standing there or a cruel imitation bent on leading her astray. Max. If that's really you, move towards my voice. She willed her voice to be steady, but the tremor betrayed her rising fear. Another flicker, and the figure trembled before her. A shimmer of light glinted where Max's flashlight had once illuminated their surroundings. The light pulsed erratically, like a heartbeat, as if signaling her to come closer. Jenna's instinct screamed for her to act. Stay with me, sweetheart. I'm coming. She ran, but the shadows shifted again, blocking her path. Every step felt like an eternity, darkness pressing relentlessly against her, trying to wrap itself around her legs. Mommy! The cry pierced the still air, sharper now, closer. It ignited her adrenaline, propelling her forward despite the grasping shadows. But every movement met with resistance. Jenna fought like a wild animal, ripping herself from their icy clutches. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, almost suffocating. Each breath felt like a wretched negotiation with the void, an exchange of hope for despair. You can't have us. She shouted defiantly, conviction outweighing fear at least for the moment. Then, a dreadful sound erupted from somewhere in the darkness. It was a deep, gut-wrenching growl, a monstrous rumble that resonated in her bones. Distracted by the noise, she lost sight of the flicker, her hope dimming with it. Max! Panic struck her again as she turned, desperately trying to find him amid the swirling shadows. And then she saw it, an ethereal glow in the distance. Max! Jenna braced herself, plunging towards the light, but the ground beneath seemed to shift and writhe, like a living thing refusing to yield. She stumbled, her face inches from the cold ground. Jenna's breath quickened as she felt the darkness crawl closer, the whispers coiling tighter around her neck. The bone-chilling sensation of icy breath brushed against her ear. You should have stayed away, it murmured, fading into laughter that echoed like madness. With fresh determination, Jenna steadied herself, pushing up, fighting past her fear. Max! I'm not leaving you. The shadows retreated briefly, almost hesitating as if pondering the depth of her defiance, but their patience wore thin. The air crackled with anger, movement returning in fierce waves around her. She could feel the weight of despair closing in like a vice. Mom! His voice, clearer now, pulled at her heart like a lifeline in the chaos. She summoned every ounce of strength, racing toward the source of the sound. The light flickered again, desperately desperate. Just ahead, she finally spotted him. Max stood small and trembling, rooted in place by fear. But before she could reach him, a shrill scream from the shadows pierced the air, drowning her voice. Max! And then silence fell, a heavy, suffocating silence. The darkness closed in, an oppressive weight surrounding them both. Jenna froze, dread creeping into every corner of her mind. What if the shadows had taken more than she could imagine? The faint shimmer of Max's light dwindled, the shadows swirling ominously around them. Jenna felt a chill creep down her spine with the dawning reality. Was it too late? Did she have the strength to fight against what was waiting just beyond the veil of the dark? A dreadful thought pierced her frantic mind as she cast one last desperate glance over her shoulder. Mom! The sound echoed painfully, but as she turned back to Max, darkness darted in closer. What did it want from them? And in that moment, Jenna realized there might be no escape at all. Jenna's heart felt like it was trying to tear free from her chest as she faced the encroaching shadows. The darkness wrapped tighter around her, suffocating and relentless, a living entity intent on consuming her. She could see Max's flickering light dimming, pulsating like a dying star. Each pulse felt like a beat of her heart. Max! She shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The sound ricocheted off the walls of the void, mocking her. She had to get to him. If she hesitated, the next flicker could be his last. Another growl erupted, closer now, more primal. Fear gnawed at her as she felt the darkness breathe against her neck, a chill so cold it penetrated her skin, settling into her bones. It was a reminder of her own fragility, of just how fragile their grip on life truly was. Enough! Jenna screamed, her voice hoarse but filled with desperation. You can't have us. But the shadows only chuckled, a low, echoing sound that reverberated through her skull like nails on a chalkboard. The darkness shifted again, and now Jenna caught glimpses of grotesque faces emerging from the dark, mouths twisted into silent screams, eyes wide with hunger. As she took a hesitant step forward, the grim forms began to swirl around her, closing in. Jenna focused all her energy on that flickering glow, the threatening shadows still clawing at her mind, feeding on her fear. I won't leave you. She shouted again, now more a plea than a declaration. Max's brightness glimmered, and for a moment, it felt like the air around her thickened with a warmth of hope. Jenna surged forward, each lunge for the light feeling heavier, more like a desperate crawl against the current of the insatiable void. Then she felt it, a jagged grip snaked around her ankle, pulling her back into the depths. Panic clawed at Jenna's throat as she fought against it, kicking and thrashing, but the more she struggled, the tighter its grip became. Mom, help! Max's voice cut through the haze, sharp and urgent. Max! Hold on! She could barely form the words as despair threatened to consume her entirely. The shadows laughed again, an ominous chorus of despair, mocking her attempts to reach her son. With a final effort, fueled by a pure, raw instinct to protect, she yanked her leg free and sprinted toward Max. The air crackled with energy as she pushed through, the shadows screeching in fury. She reached out toward the light, almost tasting the safety it whispered to her. And then she saw it, the peculiar shimmer forming a protective barrier around him. Grab my hand! She urged, but something new broke through the chaos, seeping into her mind. It wasn't just the dark-esque grasp she was fighting. No, there was something deeper, something insidious. Was it the shadows talking to her, or was the darkness whispering something even darker, something meant to shatter her will? Mommy, please! Max's plea filled her with renewed terror. He was shivering, frozen in place. She took another step and felt the shadows lunge forward again, a clawed hand grasping the back of her shirt. In one swift movement, she flung herself forward, throwing herself toward Max. The ground beneath threatened to pull her back, but she wouldn't let it win. She could feel the very fibers of the night trying to snatch her back into their unholy embrace. Max! Hold on tight! She reached just as he extended his little hand. Their fingers locked together, and with that single touch, a fiery bolt of energy coursed through her, igniting a fight inside her that she didn't know she had. But the shadows roared like a tempest, their deafening cries echoing in a cacophony of fury. You're ours! They shrieked, and darkness exploded around them, a wave crashing against her resolve. A blinding light erupted as Jenna and Max's joined hands sparked, illuminating the terror ahead. In an inexplicable moment, the shadows recoiled, crashing into one another, wailing in pain. Yet, beneath the flickering hope, Jenna sensed something far more sinister stirring just beyond the light. What was it hiding in the depths? What more awaited them at the end of this fight? Mom! Max's eyes widened in terror, his voice shrill as he pointed beyond the glow. And she turned, dread crawling back into her heart. Something darker loomed just beyond the light, drawing closer with each heartbeat. The shadows quivered as the light pulsed, revealing its true nature, a cold, black mass that seemed to shift and flow like a living creature. Jenna's heart thundered in her chest. What was that thing? It loomed larger, unfurling tendrils like smoke, reaching out into the light with a hunger that sent ice through her veins. Max, stay close! She shouted, pulling him towards her. The moment felt fragile, like the faintest whisper could shatter their temporary safety. The light flickered again, and for a split second, she glimpsed monstrous features hidden within the darkness, a serrated mouth and eyes that glimmered with malice. The grotesque face grinned, a rictus of glee illuminating the shadows around it. Jenna felt bile rise at the sight, a deep-rooted instinct compelling her to run. But where? The void pulsated with energy, wrapping around them, turning possibilities into nightmares. It wants to eat us, Mom. Max whimpered, eyes streaming tears. Jenna could feel his fear radiating, a tangible thing, amplifying her own. The dark entity shifted closer, its breath escaping in raspy gasps, chilling her to the marrow. No. We're not food. She screamed, gripping Max's hand tighter. The warmth of their connection sent a jolt through her, a flicker of strength against the vastness of despair that surrounded them. The light grew dimmer as if the darkness were sucking the energy from it. Shadows lashed out like whips, trying to sever the bond she shared with her son. Desperation surged, she couldn't let the darkness sever their light. A harsh roar echoed, drowning out her thoughts. The ground trembled, and the very fabric of the void began to ripple, as further beyond, she felt pulsing energy coalesce. It was more than just darkness, it was hunger, a pulsing need that stretched far and wide, the kind that clawed at the human soul. Fear bloomed in Jenna's chest, heavy and consuming. It mirrored the dark entity, feeding off her fear as it advanced once more. You'll never have us. She shouted again, but her voice shook, doubt creeping in. What if they weren't enough? Max's voice was a mere whisper, his hand cold in hers. Panic crashed over Jenna. The light flickered again, brighter yet somehow weaker. The shadows seemed to pause in confusion, giving her a second of clarity. She could feel the air thick with potential. Maybe if she concentrated, focused her energy, she could amplify their bond. Max, we have to fight back. She said, breath hitching. He nodded, determination creeping into his features. Together. Always together. She affirmed, her voice stronger now. They faced the darkness, a fortress of hope against the tide of despair. Jenna shut her eyes, envisioning warmth surging from every fiber of their being. Her heart raced as she imagined a beacon of light exploding from their joined hands, a ferocious onslaught against the foulness surrounding them. The air around them crackled with energy, understanding igniting within her. Spirit surged through her veins, enough to defy the impossible. Suddenly, the entity lunged, dark tendrils shooting towards them. Time seemed to slow as terror mingled with a rush of determination. Now! She shouted, throwing her will into the light. Bright rays shot from their grasp, a magical blast that lit the abyss in an incandescent glow. The shadows recoiled. Faces twisted in agony as they screamed, trapped in the very darkness they once commanded. But Jenna's heart sank as the pulse of dread flickered in and out, each ripple revealing the deeper horror behind. Something was yielding but not surrendering. There was still something more behind the shadows, waiting for just the right moment. The air grew heavier, suffocating her resolve. Mom. Max's tremor snapped her out of the fog. I don't know what else it is hiding. We need to. Then, with a sound that could shatter glass, the shadows howled, and the darkness surged forward, a tidal wave of malice. Before Jenna could react, a brilliant, white-hot light erupted from the depths of the void, engulfing them both in a blinding brilliance. And amidst the chaos, a voice, ancient and chilling, whispered directly into her mind, welcome home. What had they truly awakened? Jenna's world exploded in an instant of light, the shadows shrieking in undulating chaos as the brilliance tore through the darkness. It felt like being reborn, the weight of despair lifting with each pulse of radiance. She clutched Max's hand tightly, their small connection a lifeline pulling her from an abyss of fear. Stay with me. Jenna cried, eyes wide as she tried to shield him from the monstrous roar echoing around them. Mom, what's happening? His voice trembled, but determination flickered in his blue eyes. I don't know, but we can't stop fighting. We've got to believe. She shouted back, heart racing, pushing forward. The overpowering surge of light intertwined with their energy, illuminating everything, transforming the void into a realm of shimmering possibilities. The darkness shuddered, disrupted by their defiance. You do not belong. It bellowed, a chorus of rage mixed with terror. For the first time, the shadows hesitated, recoiling from the brightness. But you are here now, and you will pay the price. Jenna felt an unsettling chill return, the very air flickering as murmurs filled the space. Yet her love for Max coursed through her veins, igniting a fire she thought had dimmed. "We will not be your offering. We are here together, and we choose to survive." Max squeezed her hand, and she could feel his resolve melding with hers. Together they stepped forward, light expanding with them. The shadows trembled, morphing from their grotesque forms into something less cohesive. Figures swirled around her, desperate to draw them back, to ensnare them in their cold embrace once more. With a fierce shout, Jenna unleashed their combined energy. "If you want us, then you'll have to face our light." The radiance exploded like fireworks, pulsing waves crashing against the dark entities. The air vibrated with a raw strength that sent ripples through the shadows. Each pulse dispelled layers of terror, revealing the humanity trapped within those dark forms, whispering for release. And perhaps in that moment, Jenna understood. The darkness was not simply a foe, it held broken souls, lost children, people woven into a tapestry of suffering. Was this what Mr. Wiggle had wanted all along? To feed on fear, yes, but also to trap them in endless despair like a spider in her web? "Mommy, it's so bright!" Max exclaimed, his exuberance igniting her spirit even more. "Yes. Keep holding on, sweetheart. We'll find a way to save them." Each word thundered with conviction as they pressed on, seeking to illuminate the darkness surrounding them. Jenna's heart thumped erratically against her ribcage as she saw the shadows begin to fragment, flaring with sparks of lost hope. "Release them," she shouted into the overwhelming void. The shadows writhed in agony, and a haunting scream echoed in response, reverberating deep in her bones. "You cannot save them." A low voice hissed, now entwined with desperation. "They belong to me." "No. We all belong together." Jenna yelled, remembering her own battles, her own past fighting through pain, and how love had triumphed. Her vulnerability became strength. "We choose to live. We choose to fight for what is good." She could see it in Max's eyes, the belief that something better awaited. Drawing strength from him, she allowed the light to burst from their clasped hands one final time, releasing everything she had inside. In a blinding flash, the shadows screamed, collapsing like a deck of cards as the radiant energy engulfed them. One by one, they began to disperse, the faces of those lost flickering like flames before vanishing entirely. Shadows danced away, twisting, unraveling, until only the ethereal glow surrounded them. "Mom?" Max asked, his small voice reminding her of their mission. "I'm right here," she smiled, relief washing over her like a wave. "We did it, Max. We faced Mr. Wiggle, we faced the darkness, and we survived." As the last echoes of the shadows faded, Jenna found herself standing in a new realm, one filled with soft light, like an early morning sun spilling through lush trees. The entire space felt welcoming and alive. "Where are we?" Max whispered, looking around in awe. "I think we're in a place of hope." The atmosphere shimmered, wrapping them in an embrace of warmth, where the dread no longer held sway. Turning to Max, Jenna knelt down and took his little face in her hands. "You were incredibly brave, sweetheart. We fought through something so scary, and we made it. You were my light." A smile broke across Max's face, bright enough to rival the sun. "We're free, Mommy." "Yes, we are." As she held him, a profound well of emotions washed over her. Their journey, filled with nightmares, had forged an unbreakable bond, one that would shine bright against any darkness, any fear. They could let go of the shadows of the past, step forward with hope, and embrace the love that had always been theirs. "Ready for a new beginning?" she asked, heart swelling. "Yeah. Let us go make new stories," he declared, excitement bubbling up as he took her hand, and together they stepped further into the glowing expanse before them, and with every step, Jenna felt the weight of fear lift, replaced only by the endless possibilities of a future filled with light and love. Now, as this tale comes to a close, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. And don't just stand idly by, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling ending. Share your thoughts, this is the moment to show your support. Lastly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.